You have been lied to about reincarnation. It is not a graceful evolutionary spiral toward wisdom. It is a meticulously constructed prison designed to keep you from ever truly finishing the game. A cosmic debt cycle where the currency is suffering and the interest rate is your own desperate desire to exist. We pretend that reincarnation offers infinite chances to learn, but the terrifying truth is that it offers infinite chances to forget everything you learned the last time. This is the ultimate spiritual extortion. The system requires your return to justify its own continuation. The comforting myth sold by spiritual wellness gurus is that we are on a grand journey toward oneness. But look closer at the destination. Look at Nirvana. It is packaged as the ultimate liberation, the shedding of the ego, the eternal freedom from suffering. But what is truly shed? Everything that makes you you. The individual consciousness, the specific memories, the unique scar tissue of experience, all terminated. Nirvana is not elevation. It is the ultimate resignation. It is the moment you finally accept that the only path to peace is annihilation. This is the dark secret that no monk or guru dares to articulate. The highest aspiration of traditional enlightenment is a profound, permanent exit from the conscious stream. It is game over, and the goal of the game masters is to make you desperately crave the off switch. If you are tired of the shallow, feel-good spiritual placebos and are ready to confront the actual uncomfortable machinery of reality, then hit that subscribe button now, because we are about to pull the lever and watch the great cosmological engine reveal its gears. The trap, known in the East as samsara, is often visualized as a wheel, which implies movement and forward progress. But a wheel is defined by its ceaseless return to the same point. It is the Sisyphean nightmare dressed up in beautiful mandalas. We are told our suffering is due to attachment, but the greater, more fundamental attachment is the force that guarantees your immediate return: karma. Karma is not justice. It is the most sophisticated psychological binding agent ever conceived. It functions as a metaphysical credit score, ensuring that every time you feel you have paid off your debt and are ready to leave, a new, unforeseen liability, a residual action, an unfulfilled desire, an echo of a past trauma, forces you back to settle the account. It is rigged. You cannot pay off a debt if the act of trying to pay it generates new, larger debts in perpetuity. Consider the logical contradiction at the heart of this belief system. If the ultimate goal is the cessation of individual consciousness, the ultimate non-self, or anatta, then why is the preceding life required to be one of intense, conscious moral striving? Why must we cultivate deep compassion, rigorous self-awareness, and profound understanding, only for that perfectly polished instrument of perception to be instantly dissolved upon reaching the finish line? It is like spending 20 lifetimes building the perfect telescope just to smash it the moment you see the stars. The only rational answer is that the system doesn't value the individual journey. It values the energy generated by the striving itself. You are not the traveler, you are the fuel. The struggle is the point, not the arrival. This leads us to the most dangerous aspect of the reincarnation trap. It pathologizes presence. It teaches us to hate the moment, to view the physical world, the sensation and the ego as an impurity that must be purged. Yet this painful, messy, specific life, this fleeting moment of sharp individuality, is the only reality we have ever, or will ever, truly experience. Nirvana promises a liberation from consciousness, suggesting that the highest state of being is essentially a perfect spiritual coma. But is freedom truly the escape from existence, or is it the ferocious, unyielding acceptance of existence on your own terms? If the only way to win is not to play, what does that say about the integrity of the game? If Nirvana truly is a spiritual coma, if the goal is the cessation of the finely tuned instrument we call consciousness, why do billions cling to this narrative? Because the alternative, sheer, terrifying, singular finality of this one specific life is often unbearable. The reincarnation model is not primarily designed to liberate you. It is designed to relieve you of the existential panic of permanence. If you fail today, if you betray your principles, if you waste 20 years, it is fine. You have 10,000 chances left. This infinite runway is a powerful psychological sedative, allowing you to procrastinate on true, committed action, because failure here is merely a setback, not annihilation. This deferral of the ultimate stakes is the system's most effective defense against critical scrutiny. It tells you your current suffering is not meaningless chaos, not random biological tragedy, but meaningful, earned consequence, a debt you are actively, importantly, working off. This narrative elevates the mundane suffering of existence into a heroic, multi-millennial saga. It takes the randomness out of pain and replaces it with a comforting, though brutal, arithmetic. We would rather believe we meticulously earned our pain than accept that pain is often just a statistical accident of chemistry and environment. If you recognize the psychological gravity of these ancient, self-sabotaging structures, and want the full, uncensored analysis of how they operate, then make sure you are subscribed now. You will not want to miss the depth we are about to dive into. This is where the trap deepens into what can only be called moral narcissism. When a system tells you that everything that happens has a reason, specifically a moral reason derived from your past actions, it grants you the ultimate alibi against meaninglessness. You become the central, indispensable protagonist in a cosmic drama stretching back across epochs. Even the agonizing pain you endure becomes a secret badge of honor, proof that your soul is engaged in complex, heavyweight balancing acts that the uninitiated cannot possibly comprehend. The true suffering generated by this model isn't the physical pain of this life, but the spiritual self-flagellation of constantly judging yourself against an impossible standard of metaphysical perfection. Every mistake, every moment of genuine human weakness is not a learning opportunity, but a catastrophic, newly accrued karmic liability. You stop living in the tangible reality of the present moment and start living exclusively in the spreadsheet of an imagined past and a dreaded future. This obsessive auditing is precisely what prevents true liberation, because liberation is fundamentally a radical release from the need to audit existence at all. The ultimate price we pay for this comforting delusion is the inability to simply be here. The reincarnation trap actively encourages spiritual bypassing, the sophisticated habit of using lofty metaphysical ideals to avoid the gritty, painful, complex demands of current material existence. We are taught to transcend the body, transcend the sharp-edged emotional reality, transcend the relationships, because they are all framed as temporary, binding contaminants that will drag the soul back down. But what if the only actual, irreversible transcendence is the total, radical, unyielding immersion into the specific fleeting beauty of the immediate now? What if the highest form of enlightenment isn't the dissolution of the self, but the ferocious, self-authorized deployment of the self into the moment? We trade tangible reality for intangible promise. We trade real, messy, human love, which requires mutual presence and the acceptance of inevitable loss, for the cold comfort of eternal, impersonal spiritual progress. The trap is fundamentally anti-human, demanding that we deny very sensory apparatus that grants us the only genuine, verifiable contact we have with reality. We are asked to hate the clay while still being formed by it, and that hatred is the key to the lock that keeps us coming back. This ethical distancing is where the trap's true, profound cruelty reveals itself on a global scale. We see this mechanism deployed most coldly in societies that have fully internalized the karmic audit. Consider the staggering, inexcusable realities of persistent, systemic injustice, whether it is the calcified poverty of the global South or the subtle, generational violence embedded in class structures worldwide. The privileged, when faced with undeniable, unbearable suffering, a child born into famine, a population decimated by treatable disease, an entire caste system built on degradation, are provided the most elegant, morally sanitized excuse ever invented. It is their karma. This doctrine is not merely an explanation for suffering, it is a sophisticated mechanism for justifying apathy as enlightenment. It shifts the entire burden of structural violence onto the victim's metaphysical ledger, converting palpable injustice into personalized destiny. The starving child did not suffer because of human greed, resource mismanagement, or political corruption. They suffer because they earned it in a life they cannot even remember. This is the ultimate intellectual and spiritual cowardice, the refusal to acknowledge that much of the suffering in the world is not the result of cosmic retribution, but the direct, verifiable outcome of human choices made yesterday and today. This moral calculus strips us of the radical urgency required for genuine compassion. If the suffering is merely a temporary, self-inflicted lesson in the grand tapestry of lifetimes, why intervene? Why disrupt the cosmic process? Why waste energy fighting a systemic structure that is supposedly just reflecting eternal truths? The answer is simple. Because if we accept that premise, we abandon our highest ethical function, which is the immediate, non-negotiable alleviation of verifiable pain. We trade the messy, difficult, expensive work of fixing this life for the comforting fantasy that the victim will simply get a better shot in the next one. This is how a profound spiritual concept devolves into a tool of political quietism, a velvet cage that binds the collective moral imagination. It convinces us that caring too much about this moment, this life, this suffering, is a sign of attachment, not virtue. If you are struggling to hear arguments that challenge the bedrock assumptions of comfort and continuity, and you want to ensure you never miss the deep dives that expose these invisible philosophical traps, take a moment now and subscribe. The reincarnation trap thus functions as a sophisticated, infinite deferral mechanism. It teaches us to perpetually wait for the next attempt, the next life, the next level of consciousness where the answers will finally be clearer and the effort finally less required. But the only verifiable truth we possess is the radical, irreversible finitude of this specific experience. We are here now, in this body, with these limits, and our time to act is receding moment by moment. True spiritual maturity is the acceptance of the irreversible nature of choice. It is the ferocious commitment to getting it right this time, not because the consequences are infinite, but precisely because the opportunity is vanishingly brief. This obsession with future lives is nothing more than an escape from the present demand for total engagement, allowing us to treat this life as a practice run, a preliminary sketch, or a disposable draft. But reality is not a sandbox. It is the finished sculpture. The soul does not progress through endless drafts. It is defined by the absolute necessity of the stroke it lays down right now. The constant promise of a clean slate in the next existence undermines the integrity of the commitment required for this one. It makes us bad lovers, bad citizens, and ultimately bad humans, because we are always holding back a part of ourselves, preserving it for the theoretical, superior self that will allegedly emerge later. We refuse the full, glorious catastrophe of being embodied, imperfect, and absolutely present. The ultimate price of the endless cycle is the loss of preciousness. If everything comes back, nothing is truly lost. And if nothing is truly lost, nothing is truly valued. The moment loses its razor-sharp edge of significance. We confuse the gradual nature of learning with the dispensability of the lesson. The biggest lie the reincarnation ethos enables is the concept of spiritual gentleness. The insidious notion that the transformation of the self should be a soft, pain-free unfolding, a passive meditation rather than a ferocious, ethical battle fought in the mud of the present moment. This delusion that suffering is merely a temporary glitch in the system to be balanced out later robs our pain of its immediate critical value. Suffering, properly understood, is the soul's alarm system, screaming that the structure of our current life is unsustainable. But if we believe that structure is disposable, why bother fixing the foundation? We become masters of moral procrastination, always budgeting for future virtue while spending today's capital on triviality and comfort. We mistake patience for passivity and convince ourselves that the universe owes us a debt of wisdom that will eventually be paid in a later life, effortlessly. This systematic devaluation of the immediate ethical demand is not spiritual maturity. It is the height of existential immaturity. It is the sophisticated way of saying, "I'll clean up the mess tomorrow." But tomorrow never arrives in a vacuum. It only inherits the wreckage of today's choices. If you find this kind of relentless, unsparing scrutiny of our deepest cultural assumptions necessary, if you believe that the greatest philosophical value lies not in comforting lies, but in the terrifying clarity of the truth, then now is the time to subscribe and ensure this depth of analysis continues to reach you. We must stop treating our moral failures as mere draft of karma that will inevitably be perfected by subsequent iterations. The brutal utility of death is that it forces accountability. It means that the cruelty you inflicted today, the love you withheld, the potential you squandered, these are final actions, etched into the cosmos with the permanence of stone. They cannot be patched over by a future superior avatar. This recognition of finality is the only engine capable of driving true ethical urgency. Without it, we are simply children playing house, confident that the adult will eventually come in and tidy up the mess we made. The culture tells us that forgiveness means letting ourselves off the hook indefinitely, that true compassion is endless self-acceptance, regardless of the behavior. But radical self-acceptance without radical self-correction is merely spiritual narcissism disguised as enlightenment. It teaches us to cherish the brokenness rather than fix the machinery, because after all, there's always the next model coming off the assembly line. The man who truly believes he has only this one life to be decent, only this one chance to fully express his courage, is fundamentally a more engaged and therefore morally superior being than the one who views his current existence as merely a necessary inconvenience on the path to cosmic perfection. The true test of character is not how well we plan for our next life, but how fiercely we refuse to betray the precious, singular gravity of this one. Why do we cling so desperately to this doctrine of the revolving door, this guaranteed sequel to every moral catastrophe? Because the alternative, the terrifying realization that your current choices are non-refundable, non-exchangeable, and ultimately finite, is too paralyzing to the modern soft psyche. The myth of infinite chances is the ultimate cognitive shield, a brilliant piece of psychological architecture designed to protect the fragile ego from the crushing weight of existential consequence. We have effectively outsourced heroism to the future self. We tell ourselves that the necessary confrontation, the painful restructuring of character, the agonizing admission of systemic failure will be handled by the superior, yet to be manifested avatar. This is a profound failure of ego integration. We are not failing to believe in a soul. We are failing to integrate our shadow, postponing the payment of the psychic debt until the moment of death, confident that the universe operates on an installment plan. This self-deception allows us to mistake inertia for patience. True patience is active waiting, a disciplined engagement with the process that acknowledges scarcity of time. It is the deliberate refusal to rush a necessary unfolding. Inertia, however, is simply the resistance to change, the spiritual equivalent of staying in bed until noon, justifying the stagnation by claiming that the best version of yourself will emerge only when the cosmic conditions are perfect. The infinite timeline is merely the perfect excuse for present cowardice. It allows us to live perpetually in the state of becoming, rather than committing to the terrifying, irreversible act of being. This level of inquiry, digging into the psychological foundations of spiritual escapism, rather than simply reciting comfortable axioms, is precisely what differentiates deep analysis from motivational fluff. If you are here for the dissection of the modern soul, for the difficult questions that shatter easy answers, and want to support the continued creation of documentary essays, this rigorous and uncompromising, take a moment now to hit the subscribe button. We live in a culture that has pathologized pain and demonized difficulty, yet it is only through confrontation with these abrasive elements that character is forged. The belief in infinite lives is a defense mechanism against the inevitable grief associated with finitude, the grief of roads not taken, words left unsaid, and opportunities missed. But it is precisely this anticipated grief that gives life its sharp, beautiful edge. A landscape without shadows is merely a flat, washed-out plain. The existentialist knows that meaning is not injected into life by a cosmic entity. Meaning is generated by the severity of the limitations we face. When you remove the limit, you remove the creative pressure. Consider the difference between a work of art that is eternally reworkable and one that is executed in fresco. The artist knows the second requires immediate, irreversible skill. There is no painting over it. The material itself demands presence and precision. Our lives are fresco, not oil on canvas, and the modern spiritual doctrines that promise boundless correction are teaching us to treat the unforgiving wall like a disposable notepad. The profound consequence of this thinking is that we stop prioritizing the essential. When everything is theoretically achievable later, nothing is truly urgent now. This is why so many talented individuals suffer from terminal procrastination. They have internalized the comforting lie that their potential is an inexhaustible resource. They believe that the energy and insight they have today, at this specific confluence of age, health, and circumstance, can simply be banked and withdrawn later, undamaged by neglect. This is the greatest psychological betrayal we commit against ourselves, the assumption that opportunity and capacity are perfectly elastic, when in reality they are fragile, time-sensitive compounds that degrade rapidly the moment they are not acted upon. The true crisis of the modern individual is not a lack of resources, but a catastrophic failure of focus caused by the illusion of endless time. We become the ultimate diluters of our own experience, spreading our limited attention across a theoretically infinite landscape of future selves, thus ensuring that the present self is always running on fumes. The soul that believes in endless chances is a soul suffering from perpetual psychological discounting. It never fully values the currency of the moment because it expects an infinitely replenishing supply. This is why the man driven by finality is, ironically, the more liberated man. He is freed from the burden of eternal deferral. He is forced into authenticity by the clock. The soul that believes in endless chances is a soul suffering from perpetual psychological discounting. It never fully values the currency of the moment because it expects an infinitely replenishing supply. This is why the man driven by finality is, ironically, the more liberated man. He is freed from the burden of eternal deferral. He is forced into authenticity by the clock. This brings us to the tragedy of the curated life. The individual who possesses an abundance of unspent potential is often celebrated in his youth, but he is eventually devoured by the very possibility he clings to. We all know this figure, the intellectual dilettante, the person who speaks 5 languages poorly and masters none, the entrepreneur who launches 20 ideas that never stabilize into one functioning business. He is not lazy. He is suffering from terminal theoreticality. He believes that by refusing to commit, he is preserving his options, when in fact he is merely allowing his capacity for decisive action to atrophy. Commitment is the psychological triage of value. It is the necessary violent act of saying, this one thing matters more than the entire field of alternatives. Without that brutal, self-imposed limitation, we suffer the ossification of choice. The true cruelty of infinite options is that it prevents the crystallization of self. If you are perpetually readying yourself for 10 different lives, you will live exactly 0 of them. If you are finding value in confronting these inconvenient, complex truths, the kind of uncomfortable analysis that cuts through the motivational fluff and demands intellectual rigor, then you recognize the importance of supporting content that refuses to compromise on depth. Take a moment now and subscribe, because it's the only way we can keep delivering the insights that challenge the accepted psychological narratives. Look at the brutal reality of the unfinished project. Across the world, billions of hours are spent on endeavors that are 90% complete. Half-written novels, beta-stage apps, businesses with excellent logos, but no customers. These are not failures of skill. They are monuments to the fear of finality. Why do we cling to the last 10%? Because the moment you declare something done, you invite the judgment of the world. But more terrifyingly, you invite the final, irrefutable judgment of your own standard. If the project is perfectible forever, then its inadequacy today is merely a temporary state of becoming. But if you ship it, if you call it finished, you are forced to confront the definitive gap between your ideal and your execution. The man who refuses to finish his novel fears not the critics. He fears the irrefutable proof that his current skill level is not sufficient to embody the magnitude of his dream. So he keeps polishing, keeps researching, keeps delaying the inevitable moment of self-definition that true completion requires. He sacrifices his entire life to the preservation of a perfect, unproven potential. He dies holding the blueprints of a magnificent cathedral he was always just about to start building. This psychological dynamic is weaponized by the entire apparatus of modern convenience, which seeks to erase friction and delay consequences. We are sold a fantasy of infinite restarts, but the universe does not respect soft resets. It respects the indelible mark. Think of the psychological chasm between the soldier marching toward the definitive objective and the tourist drifting through an open-ended itinerary. The soldier's decisions are sharp, immediate, and consequential because the terrain and the enemy impose limits that cannot be negotiated away. His focus is absolute. The tourist, having paid for an infinitely customizable experience, drifts lazily from one half-hearted engagement to the next, viewing every sight through the insulating screen of his smartphone, knowing that if he misses this experience, there is always another one available tomorrow, or next year, or in another country. His freedom is paralyzing. His lack of consequence strips the moment of its necessity. This is why true mastery is always born from self-imposed asceticism, from an unnatural narrowing of the field of play. You become excellent not by adding options, but by deleting them. You must burn the ships of retreat. The ultimate test of character is not how well you handle infinite resources, but how aggressively you leverage the finite resources you truly possess, namely this specific, non-renewable second of action. The great mistake we make is believing that freedom is the absence of constraint, when in reality, freedom is simply the intelligent choice of which constraints to accept. You are not a vessel meant to hold an infinite sea of options. You are a crucible designed to solidify a single hard-won alloy. The refusal to complete, the eternal editing, and the ceaseless research is nothing more than the final act of evasion. It is the sophisticated way of saying, I am afraid to be judged by what I actually produce, so I will live only in the immaculate, unchallengeable realm of the imagined. The verdict is clear. Potential is the most insidious form of procrastination, the intellectual opium of the spiritually weak. Your potential is worth nothing. It is the shadow of a currency. Only commitment, defined by the definitive final stroke of execution, converts that shadow into usable reality. The soul does not reveal itself in what it might do, but only in what it has already done, and indelibly so. You must stop believing that your life is a series of drafts where infinite revisions await. This is not a rough sketch. This is the final painting, rendered in non-erasable oil, and every moment you spend optimizing the canvas instead of applying the brushstroke is a definitive, permanent choice to remain invisible. The true test of your character is whether you will step into the arena and suffer the consequence of your own finite humanity, or if you will remain safe, forever holding the perfect, untouched ammunition of your potential while the battle rages and finishes without you. Stop waiting for the cosmic permission slip to begin or for the feeling of readiness to strike. Readiness is a delusion designed to keep you comfortable. You are ready right now, and the only perfect moment is the one you seize and define by action. You owe the world not the phantom of who you could be, but the indelible proof of who you are, verified by the hard edges of your completed work. If you refuse to settle for the soft answers, if you recognize that the pursuit of genuine depth demands friction and consequence, and if you believe that thinking deeply is a definitive act of rebellion against the current age, then join this community of thinkers. Subscribe now, and let us continue this uncompromising excavation of reality together. The terrifying truth you must assimilate is that there is no cosmic ledger tracking your good intentions. The universe will not mourn the loss of your perfect unwritten book or your unlaunched company. It is utterly indifferent to your potential. The final verdict on your existence will not be delivered by how high your theoretical ceiling was, but by how solid your foundation became. You must choose now. Will you be an archive of infinite, untested possibility or a definitive, finite history of achievement? The man who dies having written 3 mediocre books is a greater artist and a more fully realized human being than the genius who died with 1,000 perfect epics still trapped in his mind. This is the final calculus of existence. If you do not commit to the execution, the potential dissolves into pure regret, a psychological residue that poisons the last years of your life. It is not the world you evade, it is yourself you abandon. The greatest failure is not trying and failing. It is succeeding only in avoiding the possibility of failure entirely. You must exchange the intoxicating comfort of infinite potential for the suffering of finite, beautiful reality. Your only redemption lies in the definitive application of effort, in the irreversible choice to be judged by what you finish and not by what you dreamt. If these uncompromising thoughts resonate with the part of you that refuses to settle for the anesthetic of modern comfort, if you feel the deep, undeniable pull to convert your shadow into substance, then stand with us. This platform is built for those who execute. Join this community now, subscribe, and let us hold ourselves mutually accountable to the brutal, beautiful reality of action. The great lie of our age is that intention matters more than outcome. Potential is merely the luxurious shadow cast by inaction. Your true self is the sum total of your completed acts, nothing more, nothing less. Never forget that the only prison you truly inhabit is the one built from your own unfulfilled desires. Break the lock with the single definitive stroke of a finished piece of work. The comfort of the what-if must die so that the terror and the triumph of what is can live. The final verdict is this. Potential is a lethal psychological anesthetic, offering comfort while guaranteeing paralysis. Your greatest achievement will be the destruction of your own escape routes. Let the mediocrity of commitment crush the perfection of waiting. The only philosophy worth having is the one you live. If you choose the concrete burden of reality over the empty dream of possibility, subscribe now. Join the community of the definitive.